Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge.
And I'm Ashley Sledge.
And let's talk horror. So today we're doing a very special episode of Didn't See That Coming on 2009's Orphan. Now, we usually do these once a month, but with the release of the prequel, Orphan First Kill, which is out now, we cannot recommend strongly enough you guys check out. We decided now would be the best time to release an episode on this very ahead of its time film. So you want to get us started here?
Absolutely. So we begin the movie with a couple walking into a hospital. They both look really happy. You see that the wife is pregnant. Her name is Kate. Nurse grabs a wheelchair and is pushing her down the hall, asking her questions like, is this your first baby? Kate says, no, it's actually my third. We're going to name her Jessica. So they're still going down the hall, and all of a sudden Kate starts just bleeding. And as she's pushing her in this wheelchair, super slowly, you see this blood smear, which I like the angle when they look up and, you know, the bird's eye angle or whatever, and you can see the smear going across the floor.
I love that during this part, Ashley, we're watching, and she's like, urgency! Urgency!
It is
Hurry
urgency.
up!
She's bleeding, and it's a lot, and we're just going super slow.
Right.
So we get back into the operating room, and they pretty much are like, I'm sorry for your loss. Your baby's dead. And so she's freaking out like, no, she's not. I can feel her. She's still alive. And they start prodding at her and doing surgery to take this dead baby out of her, while her husband is videotaping like, you're doing such a good job. Like, this isn't the time, buddy.
Right.
And also the doctor, if you notice, is her husband too. So what's going on here?
Right.
So the nurse has this dead baby covered in blood and is like, congratulations, it's a baby girl.
Right. And at this point, Kate wakes up from the nightmare, which obviously we knew something was going on, but obviously there's been a very traumatic event that we're going to be hearing more about. She walks into the bathroom looking at the mirror. She has a scar on her stomach, which we're assuming is from the miscarriage. She gets in the medicine cabinet and she takes a pill. So obviously she's having a lot of hard times coping with what happened to her in her pregnancy. Later that day, she's talking to her psychiatrist and she tells her she drove by a wine shop and that she had the urge, but she didn't stop. And the psychiatrist says, it doesn't matter that you had the urge. The most important part is that you didn't stop for the craving.
So Kate goes and picks up her daughter. Her name is Max, and she signs to her, indicating that she's deaf. They leave, and they're at a stoplight, and she sees this pregnant lady walk past her, and she's kind of in a daze watching her, and she hears a honk. So she goes, but the light hadn't turned green yet. So she's going, and there's a semi coming, and she luckily stops before the semi hits them. But she's totally distraught by this at this point. Like, looking back, Max, are you okay? And everyone's okay.
It's just weird. Like, why did someone honk at her?
I know. Like
it's a red light and someone's honking at her. Like, I don't know. I just don't get this part. I don't know if it's in her imagination she hears the honk.
It could have been. Or maybe someone was honking at,
the pregnant lady.
Like, nice belly.
What's up, pregnant lady?
Anyways, they get home and Kate is playing the piano. She plays piano. She's trying to come up with a new song and she keeps hearing a thud. And she goes outside and she's like throwing a basketball at the house. And she gets upset with her, like, I'm trying to play the piano. This is when Dad and Daniel, their son, pull up. And he gets out and he's playing with them and they're all laughing.
I like Dad, who is John here. This part has that, which is normally the opposite of every other movie. I mean, she ends up apologizing to Max.
Yeah.
Because she's yelling at her. But she's frustrated, and then you have Dad come, and Dad's superhero, and everybody loves Dad, and he's playing with the kids. And at this point, Kate's feeling very separated.
Yes, yeah.
So it has that juxtaposition of good dad, bad mom at this point, which isn't true at all. But it's giving off that vibe like Kate is more of the hard ass, and she's yelling at Max when she should be, she's just out there playing with a basketball.
Right.
But when you're working and your kids are being loud, we all understand how frustrating it can truly be.
Absolutely. So later that night, Kate's putting Max to bed, and Max asks Kate to read her a bedtime story. And Max picks it out, and it's about her sister, like a baby in heaven. And she starts reading it to her. And Max signs to Kate, am I ever going to get another sister? And Kate signs back, I don't know.
Right. So obviously this is having a big effect on the kids too. We know at least Max.
Yeah, absolutely.
That night John is trying to get intimate with Kate, and she is just not having it. They lay in the bed and they start talking about adoption, and Kate thinks that she's finally ready for it. A big overarching thing in this movie is the best things can come from the worst situations. Mm-hmm. That's a big overarching thing that we have throughout this movie. And this is where this really starts to get set into motion. So the next day they pull up to the adoption agency. It's St. Mariana Home for the Girls. Sister Abigail meets them and tells them to come in and take a look around. As John is leaving the bathroom, he hears singing and goes upstairs. He sees a little girl sitting by herself, and she's painting. Beautiful paintings. Very well. Yeah, very beautiful paintings. The girl introduces herself to John. My name is Esther, she says. Kate walks in, and then John introduces her to Esther. Mm-hmm. So Kate asks Esther why she doesn't go and join the other girls at the party. And Esther says, I don't see the point. I'm different. No one ever talks to me. Mm-hmm. And Kate says being different is not always a bad thing. You know, being different can be a very, very good thing. And you have this connection here between this little girl and these parents already. And they go to Sister Abigail's office, and Sister Abigail says the same thing. Like, we felt an instant connection. She pulls out Esther's file and tells them that she is from Russia, but she speaks English very well, considering she's only been in the States for, a few years. And this, again, is showing that arc of this little girl has felt so much trauma that she's been brought here to the States, but she's such an intelligent young lady that she can paint very well. She's learned the language very well. Very artistic young girl.
Very mature for her age.
Very, very mature for her age. So Esther has had years of trauma, like we said, in her life. And the family that adopted her and brought her to America had a house fire, and Esther barely got out of it alive. She's a very extraordinary girl, and she's a little bit of a princess almost. Like, she's always wearing these not bandages, but like ribbons around her arms and around her neck. She's very well mannered. But the only thing they've ever had trouble with is when they try to take these ribbons off. Anytime they try to take her necklace ribbon or her bracelet ribbons off, she just completely freaks out.
So this is when Kate and John decide that they're going to adopt Esther. So they take her home, and on the way there, she's already trying to learn sign language so she can communicate with Max.
And again, she's very, very intelligent, and she always wants to learn more.
So they pull up to their home. Max runs out, super excited, and Esther signs to her, hello. And she's like, look, she's learning Kate says, look, she's learning sign language.
Right. So she practiced the whole way home.
Yeah. So they go inside and introduce her to Danny, which Danny is not very thrilled to meet her. It doesn't seem, he's just like, hey.
Danny reminds me more of Kate, where, at first she was really reserved about it. She didn't want to do it, and it took a lot of convincing for John to get her on board.
Yeah.
Where Danny, he's feeling that same way now. He's really reserved, like, I don't want to get too close to this person. Where Max and John are open. Come on, come with us. Like, again, that splitting of the family almost already early on.
Plus, he's a young, boy. That boys are just like,
yeah, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, pretty much. So Esther sees the piano inside and looks over at it, and Kate's like, if you'd like to learn, I would teach you. And Esther's like, oh yeah, absolutely. she wants to learn to play the piano as well. They also introduce her to Grandma Barb. They're all playing, and she's getting presents, and she sees her room, and you can tell that Danny's a little jealous. She's getting all the attention. He's playing Guitar Hero, and he keeps saying, Dad, look over at me. And he's like, yeah, cool, bud. Not really paying him any attention.
Look at Dad, I'm about to get the high score. I'm beating I can't remember his friend's name. I'm beating his ass. He's...
Yeah. And Dad's just like, oh, cool, bud. Yeah. And this is when Esther comes in and goes for a hug and hugs Dad and looks over at Danny and is almost like, taking over, buddy. Yeah, for sure. Like, you can totally see, like, she's rubbing that into him.
Maybe this is the point where they're starting to plant the bad seed.
Possibly. So everyone's out, the kids are outside, and Grandma Barb is talking to Kate in the kitchen, and she says, they're looking out the window, and she's like, she goes by that pond like nothing ever happened, talking about Max, and she's like, does she even remember? And Kate's kind of blowing this off a little bit, like, oh, right. She's fine, like, no, she doesn't remember. And
at this point, we're kind of just like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
Maybe we'll learn more about that later.
Possibly.
Quite possibly. So, that night, Kate decides, you know what, we are going to get intimate.
Yeah.
You know, everything is going well. We're going to get intimate together. And right then, Max and Esther walk into the room and totally cock block
Absolutely.
them.
Well, Esther like goes and wakes Max up and is like, We're scared of the lightning. Let's go lay with Mom and Dad.
Yeah. And Esther says, I want to sleep next to Daddy. You know, then he's like, all right, come on in, cuddle up.
He's like, well, give me just a second.
Yeah, give me just a couple seconds here, you know. The next day, they're getting ready to leave for school, and Esther walks down with this yellow dress that just, like, looks very old-fashioned, almost Cinderella-ish.
Cinderella-ish,
and the kids are like, maybe not. And then Kate even jumps on board, like, well, let's find you something a little different to wear. And Esther comes back with, I thought it was okay to be different. And Kate's kind of just like...
You got me there, yeah.
And she's like, are you worried that the other kids are going to make fun of me? And, Esther already picking her spots. She knows what to say and how to say it already. And at this point, Kate is actually upset at this point. Like, okay, well, I got to give it to you anyway. Well, they go to school, and when she walks in and she gets introduced by her teacher, one of the little girls is like, oh, hey, little Bo Peep called, and she wants her dress back.
Of course.
Which Esther's already, like, okay, so this is how we're going to do it. Later that night, they're at home, and Esther is pulling Max on a sled, and they're going around the pond. It's frozen, it's winter, and, Kate looks outside and freaks out. She runs out, she's screaming, and she's signing, you know better, you're not supposed to be on the pond under any circumstances. Again, what the hell is going on with this pond?
Right, obviously something has happened.
We have no idea what's going on with the pond. As they start to walk away, Kate goes back inside. Esther and Max are walking away. We cut to Danny, and he's playing with a paintball gun. He's shooting targets, shooting little army men. When a bird lands on there, and him just being a dumbass little kid, shoots at the bird, ends up hitting the bird, knocking it down, really injuring it. He gets very upset. He's like, I didn't think it would hurt it. It's just a paintball. Esther comes up and tries to hand him a rock. She's like, you have to put it out of its misery. You did this. He's like, there's no way that I'm going to do it. She ends up looking down at the bird. She takes the rock and just completely crushes the bird, killing it.
So Danny's totally freaked out about that and doesn't want anything to do with it. So he goes inside. This is when we pan over and Kate is inside and she's putting away laundry, and she's in Esther's room putting away laundry, and she finds this Bible in the back of her dresser. It's this worn out Bible, and she kind of looks through it a little bit, and she pulls out this picture of an older man, and she doesn't want to get caught by this, so she tucks it away, real quickly.
Privacy.
Right.
We just got you. The last thing I want to do is invade your privacy and make you not trust me.
Absolutely.
That thin line you walk being a parent.
Yeah.
Between privacy and, trying to be involved and making sure you're doing the right things.
Right. I mean, you don't want to be over involved, especially with adoption. I think it's even different with that.
Right.
So at school the next day, the same girl that was picking on her the day before about her dress is bullying her again, and Esther has her Bible with her, and she grabs it, and Esther's pulling it, trying to get it away from her, and it flies up, and the papers fly everywhere. So she's down on the ground trying to pick up all of her papers when the girl's like making fun of her ribbon, like, oh, is that your dog collar? And yeah, she grabs it, and this is when Esther completely freaks out. Like, obviously she does not want you to touch her ribbon.
That's really weird. Why would a necklace be so important to you?
Yeah, it like covers her whole neck. It's weird.
Very odd.
Yeah. So at home, Kate is teaching Esther how to play the piano, and she's like, oh, you did a really good job. And Esther's like, no, I didn't. Like, don't lie to me. I made 10 mistakes. And
that's a pretty specific number of mistakes
she knew exactly how many mistakes she made.
Right.
Weird, right?
That's pretty odd.
It is. And then she asks Kate, who is Jessica? Max talks about her all the time. And this is when Kate takes Esther into the a garden that they have in their home, and shows her this plaque, and it's actually the baby Jessica's. Like when she
her memorial
like her
plaque.
Memorial plaque, yeah. And she said that we spread these ashes into these flowers, and as long as these are growing, the baby is still with us.
White roses.
White roses, yeah. As long as this is growing, she's still a part of us.
Right.
And this is when Esther, she starts getting a little teary-eyed and was like, she would be so lucky because you're such a great mommy. And I think Kate's like, yes, like I'm finally like,
we're making this connection.
We're making this connection.
Right.
So later that night, John comes home feeling a little frisky, and he's trying to make out with her in the kitchen and stuff, and
trying to bend her over right in the kitchen.
Exactly. And Kate, she's giving him some pushback, like, we're gonna get caught, but she finally gives in to him. And this is when you see Esther in like the little window.
It's like they have like a glass window that separates their kitchen from their dining room, and she's just standing there watching them.
She's just kind of gives them a little look and then walks away.
Mm-hmm.
So the next morning, Kate goes to Esther and is like, we really need to talk about what you've seen last night. Like, there's some things that grown-ups do that children shouldn't see. You know, like when two people love each other, they express it in different ways. And that's when Esther says,
I know, they fuck.
Now, that's quite a weird thing for a little girl to say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, little kids swearing isn't so weird, but to use something like that in the proper context when that is not something that little kids know about,
right?
Quite weird.
It is odd.
She tells John what she said and how she's worried about it because she doesn't want that rubbing off on her kids, language-wise, or being able to be taught these type of things. John says, don't worry about it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's just something that she picked up at school or something. So then we cut to John at the playground with the girls. He's got Max and Esther out at the playground. A woman comes up to John hitting on him, asks him if he can come over and help her move a chair. John's like, you know what, sure, Kate and I can help you out, I'm sure. Esther, we see on the swings, watching her bully. Her bully ends up going through the jungle gym. She goes up to the top at the slide. You then see Esther running, screaming, and she ends up pushing her bully off. On the way down off the top of the slide, she hits her leg on the slide, and you watch her ankle break.
Yes.
And then she collapses onto the ground, and Max watches the entire thing happen.
So they're at dinner time, and John is questioning Esther, like, the bully's dad said that you pushed her. And she's like, no, I didn't. She slipped. And so they ask Max, like, what happened? And Max covered for Esther and said, no, she just slipped.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, she is already like feeling that sister bond and like, I have to stick up.
I got to protect my sister.
I got to protect her for sure. So they're eating dinner, and Danny is irritated by the way she's eating.
Watch this scene. I don't see what Esther's doing wrong.
I mean, she really isn't.
She's cutting a steak, and Danny's like, why can't you be normal? I was like,
yeah.
You want her to eat the steak whole? Like, what's she doing wrong? I don't get it.
So he's like, can we just send her back to where she belongs? And this really...
He actually uses a really bad word here that we're not going to repeat.
Gonna say
it starts with an R, and can we send her back to this place? We do want to talk about the movie as much as possible, but there are certain words in every movie that we're not going to repeat, and this is one of them. We just feel like it's very disrespectful. So
absolutely.
It's good in the movie because he's using it to slander her, but it's just not a word that we're willing to repeat.
No. He does call her a freak also, and this is when Kate and John get upset, and they're like, you need to apologize to your sister. And this is when Danny says,
she's not my fucking sister.
So maybe Kate wasn't, so far off about Esther rubbing off on the kids.
Right. So this is a thing that she's already realizing her worst fears are being, maybe she isn't. The look that she gives John right afterwards is like, I told you, and you blew me off like nothing was wrong. We cut to Kate, Max, and Esther at the grocery store when Kate gets a call from Sister Abigail saying that she needs new medical, and maybe she does need new medical and dental records for Esther for the files. And then Kate walks away because she wants to talk in private. What I love about this is Esther is making Max spy on her mom, reading her lips and then relaying it back to Esther. And Kate is telling Sister Abigail about the incident and how it really worried her. And so now Esther's getting irritated, like, oh, she's talking about me behind my back. What the hell is really going on here? So we then cut to them at home.
Yeah.
And as a form of revenge, you hear the piano being played magnificently. The piano is just being rocked. Kate walks in and sees that it is Esther that is playing the piano.
So she's a little taken back by it. Like, you didn't tell me you knew how to play piano. And Esther was like, no, you asked if you could teach me and I accepted. You said that you would love to teach me. And you have a son that's not interested and a daughter that can't hear, so I accepted.
What a backhanded thing to say. Like, she's trying to hurt her, obviously. And, well, I didn't lie to you. I said what you wanted to hear because your son doesn't care and your daughter's deaf.
Yeah. So Kate tells John about Esther lying to her about being able to, not being able to play the piano.
Right.
And again, John just chalks it up to, well, she's just trying to get close to you. She's trying to find something that you two can do together.
John, once again, trying to find the good in everything.
Yes. And she's like, oh, so I should just believe everything she says then? She told me that you were hitting on Joyce at the park. And he was kind of taken back by that a little bit.
His laugh. What?
Yeah. And he was like, she just asked me to move a chair and I blew her off. And she's like, well, why didn't you tell me? We could have laughed it off. And he's like, you can't be jealous of every woman that I talk to. It's been 10 years. Indicating that he clearly had an affair on her.
Right.
And she's like, yeah, it's been 10 years, but it's only been 2 since I found out.
Right. So for him, it's been 10 years. For her, it's been 2 years. So it's still a fresh, open wound.
Fresh for her, for sure. And he's like, I feel like I deserve a little trust here. You know, I forgave you for your mistake. And she's like, I was sick. You just wanted to fuck somebody else, is what she says to him. He was like, well, you put our children in danger. So clearly she did something. And
at this point, you're starting to put together, maybe it has to do with the pond. Mm-hmm. You know, because we were starting to connect these dots a little bit. Esther's listening in the other room to the entire fight. Mm-hmm. And Sister Abigail stops by. What I love about this scene is Sister Abigail always comes at the most opportune times, or calls at the most opportune times, telling them that she may have made a mistake. John questions, I thought you've never had a problem with Esther. Mm-hmm. Sister Abigail says trouble seems to find her everywhere she goes. Something is stolen, Esther is right there. Every time something happens, Esther is right there. Whenever it would happen over at the orphanage, the family's house that burns down, it was arson, and the culprit was never caught. John's not buying any of this, thinking that Esther's just a little girl.
Yeah, how could she possibly do all of this bad stuff?
John's defense of Esther here, he's the fatherly thing is really happening here. He's going all out to defend Esther at this moment.
So Esther, of course, is listening again, and she goes and gets Max and says, I need your help. There's this mean woman that's going to try to take me away. Can you help me find the treehouse keys? So Max obviously doesn't want her to be taken away, helps her find the keys. On the keychain, there's also a key to a safe. And Esther opens the safe and there's a gun in there. She takes every round out except for one. And she puts it in Max's face and is like, do you want to play a game? And frightened, Max just shakes her head, no.
Yeah, it's a revolver. She takes them out, does the for a Russian roulette. Mm-hmm. I hate how, okay, maybe later we'll play.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, we're really starting to see a different side of Esther.
There's something wrong with Esther.
So as Sister Abigail is leaving the house, she's driving away over a bridge, and the girls are on the side of it, kind of hidden. Esther pushes Max out onto the road, falling in the middle of the road. This is when Sister Abigail sees her and swerves. She crashes her car. Mm-hmm. And so she gets out like, oh my gosh, Max, and runs up to her. And then all of a sudden you see behind Sister Abigail is Esther, and she smashes her with a hammer.
Right in the face.
Yeah. So Max is freaked out, crying, and she's like, stop crying and help me, grab a leg. So Esther
is so cold here. Like, we've seen the fact that she's cold because she kills the bird earlier.
Right.
But now this is a human being. The bird you could kind of forgive, not because it's a bird, but because the fact of, Danny hit it with the paintball. Right. It's suffering. You got to put it out of its misery. This is a human being that's done nothing wrong.
Yeah. So these two little girls, they pull Sister Abigail and they throw her over the hill. But Sister Abigail's trying to get up. She's still alive at this point. That's when Esther comes behind her and just beats this woman to a pulp. She is a very strong little girl.
And she's just repeatedly smashing her in the head with this hammer.
So they're in the tree house, and Max is like, you tricked me. And she's like, it doesn't matter now. If I get in trouble, you're going to go to jail too, pretty much.
Just for helping me. Yeah. You're an accomplice.
And she's like, she kind of then, after she says that, puts on like
I'm your big sister.
Yeah, like, are you really going to tell on me, Max? And Max says, no, I won't tell on you. So they're walking back from the treehouse, and
well, Esther takes the evidence.
Oh yeah, Esther takes the evidence and hides it under
house.
Like a board in the treehouse.
Where Danny keeps his Playboys.
Yes.
But Danny's grounded from the treehouse, so he can't go in there right now. So this is the perfect place to hide your stuff.
Right. So Danny is outside also, and he's behind a snowbank, and he's watching the girls in the treehouse. Like, I thought that was locked,
Right.
And so he sees them walking back to the house, and Esther looks over and he ducks down. Like, he doesn't want her to know.
He looks back up and she's gone. So thankfully she didn't see him.
Right. So later that night, he's sleeping, and Esther goes in his room, and she's got like a cutting knife, like a box cutting knife, and puts it to his neck and is like, "What did you see?" And he was like, "I just seen you guys in the treehouse, nothing more." And she's like, "If I find out you're lying, I'm gonna cut your little prick off before you know what it is used for." So yeah, he's scared at this point, and he literally keys to bed.
So we cut to the next day. John has finally relented, and he's decided, you're right, let's take her to the psychiatrist. So John and Kate take Esther to Kate's psychiatrist, Dr. Brown. After she's done talking to Esther, she tells the parents that maybe we need to take a closer look at the relationships that she's building with everybody, because most importantly, the one with Kate. Now, Kate's shocked, and she says, maybe Kate is blocking her attempted bond with her. And she says that maybe it's her guilt of the accident with Max, making her feel like an inadequate mother. Kate says, I don't feel like an inadequate mother.
She's like, I'm not inadequate.
Yeah, what did she tell you?
Yeah.
And she's like, I can't say that. But, she's a shy girl going through a difficult time. And now we see that Esther is in the bathroom. She's just sitting on the floor looking, and she's just saying, she didn't hear you. She didn't hear you. And then she starts going crazy. Like, she's kicking the stall, pounding everything that's in there, screaming. We cut back to the room, and the doctor's like, maybe we need just a little bit of patience and understanding. Sister Judith ends up calling Kate and asking if Sister Abigail ever made it to their meeting. And Kate's like, yeah, she was here. Why? And she's like, well, she hasn't been back since then, and she's missing. And the cops end up finding Sister Abigail dead under the bridge. John asking the police who would do this. Esther's in a room turning on and off the black light to her fish tank. And you see the painting, and when she turns the light off, there's nothing on there. It's just the orphanage. But when she turns it on, there's like fire and people dying and the scariest shit on this that's done with a black light.
So Kate starts searching for children who kill, and she finds a bunch of different articles about their personalities and how they charm people into getting what they want, pretty much. And so she goes and shows this to John, because a lot of these traits Esther has.
Right.
And again, John's just like, whatever. He blows it off. So he's like, oh, are you going to show this to Dr. Brown? And Kate's like, no, we're not going there anymore, because, Dr. Brown pretty much made everything that has happened Kate's fault.
Right.
So.
And now Kate's pushing it off like, well, you know what? What I love about here is you're kind of almost getting the feeling that maybe Kate is crazy. Well, you know what? Even the doctor's saying something wrong. Well, it's the doctor's fault.
Right.
Everything goes wrong. It's Esther's fault. So, and that alcoholic addiction, you have an addict that's always blaming everybody else. It's always everybody else's fault. So you kind of have that coming through here too, which I think is brilliant.
So Kate wants to find more about Esther, so she contacts the orphanage that Esther came from in Russia, but they have absolutely no record of her ever being there, which is odd, right? So that day, she takes the kids to school, and before they get out to, go into school, she turns around and asks them, like, has Esther ever done anything to you guys? Has she ever hurt you? Anything that I should know about? And both of them just kind of look at each other and are like, no. You can tell that they want to tell her.
They're terrified.
But they're terrified.
Right. So we see John and Esther, and John wakes Esther up, and he's like, hey, we got to go to your dentist appointment. She's like, no, I don't want to go. I don't feel good. He's like, all right, well, how about this? You and I will play hooky today. So they're hanging out, and then John and Esther are talking, and Esther says, Mommy doesn't like me. John tells her, do something nice for her. She loves you. She loves you very, very much. Just do something nice for her to show her that you care. She goes out back, and she cuts all the flowers out of the memorial garden for Jessica. She comes back in, and she gives them to Kate, and Kate freaks out, grabs her arm, throws her down. What did you do? What did you do? Esther starts screaming and crying. John comes in saying that it was his fault. He suggested it. Kate's like, no, she knew. She knew what that garden meant.
I mean, when she came in, she had him behind her back, and she's like, I have something for you, Mommy.
Right.
She totally knew what she was doing.
Kate goes into the garden, and she just sobs like a baby, knowing that, she just lost her baby again.
Right. Like for the second time at this point.
Right. That's just, of all the things a human being in this world should go through, losing a child is one of them that's at the very top of the list. Losing a child twice is unfathomable. So Esther puts her arm in a vise, and she bites down on a screwdriver and cranks the vise until it literally snaps her arm. Very smart for a little girl to do something like this. Then she's screaming in the room, telling John that her arm still hurts. John takes her to the hospital. So we find out that she has a broken arm, which we obviously know. Kate's like, that's impossible.
Like, I didn't grab her that hard.
Yeah, I did not grab her that hard. Esther wants to sleep with John because she's scared. John tells Kate, maybe it's better that you sleep downstairs tonight.
So Kate is super stressed. Her family's falling apart. So she drives to a liquor store and she buys 2 bottles of wine. And as she's buying them, she's like, "Oh, we're having a dinner party." Like, she's like embarrassed.
She's making excuses to a guy that doesn't give a flying fuck.
Who could care less?
Why she's buying them.
Cool. Like, cool.
Good for you. Again, addict behavior. It's not me. I'm not doing this for me.
Absolutely.
So the alcoholism addiction is really starting to come out here.
So back at home, she pours herself a glass of wine and she's sitting there and she goes and looks out her window and she looks down at the frozen pond. And this is when she pours the wine out. That whatever happened is tragic and she knows better. Like, she doesn't want to go down that road again.
Right. And she dumps all of it down. She never doesn't take a sip.
No, she doesn't take it. She doesn't drink the glass and then she dumps one of the bottles out.
Yep.
So the next morning she's dropping the kids off again and Danny's going up to the school when all of his books fall out of his bag. So she gets out to help him, noticing like his book bag was ripped. Like, I just bought this.
Right at the bottom.
Yeah, I just bought this for you. So she's helping him pick him up. This is when Esther is out of the car and she puts the car into neutral and then takes the parking brake off. Max is still in the car at this point. The car starts going down the hill backward. Kate realizes it and starts running after the car, and it's going down fast. She can't get to it. This is when it slams into a snowbank, and thank goodness Max is okay.
Right, and it crosses the road. Thank goodness there wasn't a car coming at this moment or anything like that.
Right.
So could have been a lot worse, but...
Right. So after this happened, John and Dr. Brown, the psychiatrist, have a meeting with Kate, like... there's a lot going on, and she's like, "I want Esther out. I'm done." And Dr. Brown is like, "You're blaming all of your problems on Esther. Like, you need to take a look at yourself."
Yeah.
This is when John pulls out the empty wine bottle and is like, "The girls found this morning." And she's like, "You mean Esther found it?"
Again, pushing it off on someone else.
Right. And so they're like, "You need help. We've reserved a
spot for you, a bed
for you, so you can get help with your drinking again." And she's like, "I didn't take a sip of it." And John is like,
she's like, "You have to believe me." And John's like, "I don't."
Right. And he's like, "I'll give you a week. And if you don't go to rehab, I'm leaving and I'm taking our kids."
Right.
So this is when Esther's watching again, whispers in Max's ear, "If you tell mommy anything, I will shoot her. I will shoot her right in the head." So, she is
dark.
Very dark.
And she has a way of holding it over the other kids so they don't say anything.
Right. This is when Danny asks Max, like, what is she doing? Like, and, what have you seen?
What have you seen her do?
And this is when Max pulls out all these different drawings all
the bad things that Esther's been doing. So Danny asks her, "Are all these bad things up in the treehouse? Is that why you guys were in there?" And Max nods yes. Danny tells Max, "We'll go get them, and then they'll have to believe us." Esther is outside the room, obviously listening to everything that is going on.
Because Esther's always listening to
She's
everything.
Everywhere. She's a fucking enigma. Later that evening, Kate gets up and is trying to get the kids out of the house, but Esther is waiting for her in Max's room. And Kate tells her to go back to her room. Esther's like, "I think we're past that now, Kate." Kate tells her she's not going to allow her to hurt her children. Esther says, "You passed out drunk and you would have been in jail and Max would have been dead if it wasn't for John." She's read Kate's diary. And this turns into a big fight between the two of them. And even after Kate takes the diary away, Esther is still reciting lines from the diary. Like, that's how much she knows about it. Kate is searching for Esther's Bible, finding it stuffed in a stuffed animal. She opens it, and inside there's different pictures of a bunch of different older men and a little tiny logo at the very end of it that says Sarnes Institute.
So Kate looks up the number for the Sarnes Institute and she calls them. And she luckily finds someone that could speak English. And she says, "I need to speak to you about a little girl." And the man says, "She didn't come from here. This isn't an orphanage. It's a mental institution." Yeah. So while this is happening, Danny is trying to get into his treehouse and find, all the evidence that Esther hid in there. And Esther was there before him because she was listening, and she's like, oh, you're looking for this? And she's got the pictures that Max drew and the bloody hammer, and she lays them on the ground, puts some gas on it, and lights it on fire. This causing the whole treehouse to light on fire. She gets out and actually locks.
She padlocks him in there.
Yeah.
So he can't get out that bottom door.
So he's screaming, Mom, Mom. And Kate is on the phone with Sister Abigail telling her.
Sister Judith.
Sister Abigail's already.
Sister Abigail's already.
Sorry.
She's on the phone with Sister Judith telling her, I think I might have found something.
She says she's actually from Estonia. So she's not even from Russia.
Right.
This is when he gets out of the house. He's on top of the treehouse now. And it's burning, falling down. And this is when he falls down onto the ground.
So now Esther picks up a brick. She walks up right above Danny. She's getting ready to crush him, much like she did the bird earlier, when Max runs and slams into her, pushes her down, and Max looks at her and is just like, no, you're not doing that to my brother. Kate sees the fire, comes out running and screaming. They take Danny to the hospital. He has abdominal bleeding and a very serious neck injury, but he is going to be okay. Esther asks Grandma Barbara for $1 for the pop machine. But when Esther goes down the hall, I love this. At first, she's all smiling and cute and innocent.
There's light.
And as she goes through the dark, she comes back out and you see the true anger and hatred on her face.
Evil.
She goes into Danny's room and takes the monitor off his finger.
It's like the pulse ox that's on his finger.
And she puts it on her finger so it can read her pulse. And she ends up taking a pillow and puts it over his face, suffocating him, killing him. She just killed this little boy. So obviously he starts coding out, and they come back and they were able to resuscitate him. Kate is freaking out. She goes to find Esther. She knows that she's behind this. What did you do? What did you do? She just walks up and bitch slaps her. Awesome. Knocks her down to the ground. They call orderlies to come. They sedate Kate and they take her away.
Yes. And as they're pulling her away, you see her phone, in the commotion, her phone fell and it's ringing. So she misses her phone call.
She misses the phone call, which could be very important.
Could have been. This is when John, he goes into the room. She's kind of waking up from the sedation, groggy. And he's like, I'm going to take the girls home. Danny and Danny's going to be okay. And Kate tells him, just don't let Esther anywhere near Max. He's not listening to that again because he thinks that Esther is
this angel.
Listen,
this is Kate. I can't deal with your deflection anymore. You're an addict. You need help. You're going to stay here, and I'm going to take the kids home.
Yeah. So John, he goes and he puts his Max to bed. This is when Esther comes in, and Max kind of she's scared. She's scared, and she tells her good night, and she grabs her hearing aids off the stand, and John doesn't notice this at all.
Yeah, Esther ends up grabbing Max's hearing aids.
Yes.
And then ends up leaving the room.
So back at home, John, he's downstairs. He poured himself some wine. He's having a cigarette to calm down his nerves. This is when Esther is in the other room cutting up a dress. She enters the living room and she's all dolled up. She's got makeup on. She's got this little black dress on. And John kind of sees her blurry because, he had some wine. She tells him she didn't want to be alone. So she sits next to him. And she keeps telling him she loves him and is, kissing on his cheek. Him pulling away, what's gotten into you,
Very uncomfortable scene.
This scene is very uncomfortable. This is when she starts crying, I thought you loved me. And he's like, not like that. That's the way me and Kate love each other. And this is when she whispers in his ear, let me take care of you. And this freaks him out. He stands up angry and he's like, I'm going to have a call with Sister Judith in the morning and we're going to talk about your future here in this house.
Right. Because she's laying it on thick, nobody respects you the way I do.
Yeah.
She's really, getting under his skin. Kate gets another call and she answered it. It's from Dr. Bavara at the Sarn Institute. He has seen the picture of Esther that Kane has sent him. And he's like, where is she now? Can she hear you? And she's like, no, she's at home with my husband. And he's like, you need to get your family away from her. Kate's like, well, I don't understand. This is when he says,
then tell him the little girl in the picture is not really a little girl. She's a grown woman.
That's a twist. That's very twisty.
So the doctor goes on to tell Kate that she's killed 7 people that he knows of at this point. That the family here in Estonia, they adopted her, and when she couldn't seduce the husband, she killed them all and then set their house on fire.
Sounds a little familiar.
Yes, for sure. So back at home, Esther, or Lena, whatever you want to call her at this point, she starts removing her false teeth. Well, they're not false, they're just like a covering.
Yeah, almost like a Halloween cover.
Yeah. And her ribbons from around her neck and from around her wrists that show the scars from her straitjacket. And she's just going ballistic in her room, breaking things. John hears this and he goes upstairs to figure out what's going on. She's nowhere to be found. In the room, though, there's these pictures, the blacklight pictures, all over the wall, and they're super violent pictures. And he's just looking at them like, really realizing how evil Esther truly is at this point.
Right.
And so he starts ripping these pictures down, and behind them there is this really weird picture of the 2 of them together, and they're naked.
And luckily they made Esther look like an adult for these pictures,
Yeah.
but it's still super uncomfortable because of the message it's putting out.
It's very awkward.
Right.
So the phone starts ringing, and then the power goes out at the house. Kate's trying to get home to them. It's a snowstorm, and she's driving super fast, but she's all over the road, almost getting hit by a snowplow. So John he's trying to figure out why the power went out, and he goes and he finds the fuse box, and it's completely destroyed. Esther has destroyed it. She comes up from behind him, and she stabs him. He falls down. She must be a very strong dwarf.
Yeah, because she gets on top of him and just starts repeatedly stabbing him in the chest.
He can't defend himself at all.
Right.
So she's stabbed him constantly, and Max is watching this whole thing from the top of the stairs, and she's scared and goes and hides.
Yep, she hides, and then Esther goes and gets the gun out of the safe. This is right as Kate comes home, and she can't stop the car, so she crashes right into the house. She sees John on the floor. She tries to talk to him, but it's too late. He's already gone, unfortunately, so John has died. She goes to look for Max to see if she can find her. Esther sees her from downstairs. Upstairs, she shoots, hitting Kate in the arm. Kate goes in the bedroom when she's trying to hide. She sees that it's decorated with candles in one single rose, and she's just like, what the fuck?
What the fuck happened here?
Right. Max hides in the garden. Esther finds her and starts shooting at her, trying to get her. Kate is on top of the greenhouse garden at this point. Esther shoots one shot up, which breaks the glass enough for Kate to jump. She smashes through the glass, falls down, lands right on top of Esther, presumably killing her right there in the greenhouse. She takes Esther's gun, grabs Max. She walks outside, hearing sirens coming in the distance. But when the police get there, Esther is not laying in that spot anymore, so she is not dead.
Where'd Esther go? So this is when they're walking through the woods, and Esther attacks Kate, and they kind of tumble down a hill, and they fall out onto the icy pond. Right. During the fall, she drops the gun.
Right.
So Max grabs the gun, and she tries to shoot Esther, but she misses. She's a little girl.
Right.
And this causes a crack in the ice, and the whole thing comes open, and they fall into the pond.
Esther and Kate both fall right into the frozen pond.
Which, this gives me anxiety. Stuff like that freaks me out. Like when you're under ice like that.
She's trying to push her way up.
Yeah, that gives me anxiety for sure. So she finally finds the hole that they fell in, and she tries to get out, but Esther grabs her leg and grabs her back into the water. Kate is able to kick her way, like kind of knees her in the face or something, and she gets out onto the ice. This is when Esther grabs her leg and is like,
don't let me die, mommy.
Don't let me die, mommy. Trying to play the innocent card again. Kate not having it. She says, I'm not your fucking mommy, and kicks her, like breaking her neck, and Esther falls back into the pond dying.
And that's how the movie ends. And what I love about this is Esther doesn't know that Kate knows. So that's why she still tries to play the, don't let me die, mommy.
Right.
Like, she doesn't know that Kate knows everything that she knows. And so what I love about this movie is the ambiguity that it ends with.
Yeah.
Ambiguity, I think, is the word. I'm sorry, I'm not all here right now. But what I love about this is I thought that they were going to take this when I heard they were doing another part of this movie, and I thought that they were going to build on Max's story. Because Max went through a lot of trauma here, starting with losing Jessica, then potentially losing her brother, watching everything that Esther has done. So I thought that that's what they were going to go. But I love the idea of a prequel so we could see how Lena became Esther.
I like that too. I'm excited to see how this happens.
Right. So when it comes to this film, out of 5 skulls, what would your ranking be?
I'm gonna give it a 3.5.
Okay.
It's a good film. It keeps you entertaining. I love a twist. A good twist is, it definitely got me with a good twist. So, it's not your average I'm a kid killer. It's like,
Sure.
It has that twist of she's actually an adult. So I'm gonna give it a 3.5.
I'm going to go lower. I'm going to give it a 2.5. And the reason why I'm going to do that is I do love the bad seed aspect of it. You have this killer little kid. I like the twist that it's not actually a little kid, but a lot of the kid to adult stuff made me extremely uncomfortable.
I agree with that.
I feel like the runtime was way too long. You could have easily... This movie's over 2 hours long. But I mean, the acting makes up for it. The story makes up for it. A lot of the visuals really make up for it. There's one visual I really like when Esther's walking after she's been found out. You don't know she's found out, but she's taking her teeth out and stuff. And she looks old.
Yeah.
Like the way that they portrayed her in this point makes her look a lot older than she actually is. So a lot of the cinematography is great. But the kid to adult stuff made me very uncomfortable. The runtime was excessive. But overall, like I said, 2.5 out of 5. It's a good movie. I've watched it more than once, and every time I watch it, I pick up on something else I like. I like the storytelling in it. So I, for one, am very, very excited about the prequel, Orphan First Kill, which drops today. You can watch it on Paramount Plus, and you can also check it out in select theaters. So make sure you guys are doing that. But until next time, I am Ken Sledge.
And I'm Ashley Sledge.
Keep talking horror.
Stay who you are.
And we'll see you guys soon.